Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Hughes. I'm Head of Commercial at Agrovista. Woke up this morning. This industry never ceases to amaze me. One of the Australian turf media channels posting a video, it's on social media, of an individual putting their hand in insecticide and showing the granulation of the insecticide. Fantastic. So hopefully you're with two very industry responsible companies this morning that tell you how to do things the right way and with the right best practice. And I can assure you this isn't the way that I would like to be doing business and educating and training you through webinars, but this is what 2020 has been about. We really appreciate you taking your time to join Agrovista Amenity and Aquatrols for this Redox educational webinar. I'm joined by Michael France and Hamish Crichton this morning. Just a little bit of context about Aquatrols and Agrovista Amenity. So in my guise with pitch care, I've been with the industry, firstly with pitch care since 2003, and then that went on to Maxwell Amenity. And we started working closely with Farmura about 4 or 5 years ago. And then that transitioned into Aquatrols. And then obviously the buyout of Maxwell Amenity by Agrovista in 2019, we became an Aquatrols dealer for 2020 and have worked very closely with them to bring American technology, which is Redox, nutritional technology, which we feel is very innovative. And we've had some fantastic initial customer results on to the industry this year. So without haste, I'm going to pass over to Michael France from Aquatrols, who's going to give you a little bit more context on Redox. Thank you, Mike.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to bring up the presentation. So hopefully everybody's safe and well. And as Dan said, it's not the ideal way to interact, but it's something we've all become accustomed to this year. For those of you who don't know me, I am Michael France. My job title is European Account Manager, and I also give technical support to the UK business. And joined today by my colleague Hamish, who we will be tic-tacking through this presentation. What we're going to try to cover over the next hour or so is an introduction to Redox, a bit of the background of the story. Hamish is going to go through the product range, but we are going to tic-tac through that with a couple of case studies as well. Then I'm going to talk about a few solutions to common turf problems. Then I'm going to finish with a sort of a summary, conclusion, and some questions. Before I start, you'll see 3 icons in the top right-hand corner of your screen. One is chat, one is polls, one is handouts. Now, the chat, you can use that at any point during the presentation to type a question. Please feel free to do that during the presentation, although we might leave those till the end to answer. There's also polls in there. So there are 3 questions there, yes or no. Just simple things that will give us a bit of feedback on your thoughts on the subjects that generically link to Redox technology. You've also got some handouts there, so at any time you can download those. There are bigger CPD points for anybody who's a member of bigger, and also basis points available for today. So without further ado, I will crack on. So Redox. If you weren't already aware, Aquatrols signed a global agreement with Redox back in January this year to become the sole global rights owner of the Turf RX range to the sports turf market. Now, to understand Redox, you really need to understand a bit more about its founder. So it says there, Darren Moon, an apple farmer with a vision. So the story behind Darren is that he studied agriculture at university in America and left with a degree. And he took on the family business, the fruit business. And his father was actually a biology teacher. So you've got Darren coming out of university, learning how to farm in a sort of a modular way, a join the dots way, a sort of paint by numbers way. And if you put your nutrition on, you did your insecticide, your herbicide, your fungicide, etc., you got the results of the crop at the end of the day. Something I always think of when I talk about this story is something my colleague Paul Lowe mentions, that every action has a reaction. Now, all that nutrition, herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, had a reaction, the reaction that was desired. Every single one of those inputs would have an undesired reaction, which we'd all be aware of. So there's a trade-off to that type of approach. Now, with the untimely death of Darren's father in the mid-90s, he had time to reflect on everything. A bit like this year, we've all had time to reflect on life. Could we live our life differently? And he sort of reflected, is there a different way? Is there a different way for him as an apple farmer to produce the apples that he needs to sell? And being an idealistic person and passionate person, his ethos really wraps around the phrase plant needs first. He really thought we need to put the plant first rather than the nutrition program, the plant protection program, etc., etc. So two key points he believed were that all plants would benefit from more soluble carbon in the system, and that nutrition application could be more efficient. In fact, he felt that it was totally inefficient. So when we talk about putting the plant needs first, what we're really talking about with the Redox technologies is assisting natural plant processes. We need to make it more self-sufficient. Hamish is on the call, he might mention this later, but I love it when he said a lot of turfs on life support. We need to reduce that reliance on fertilizer and pesticide programs that have become the norm. And we need to put nutrition on in the most available and plant available forms. So it's far more efficient. I've used this slide for many years, make no apology for that, but it's from 2009. It's a United Nations study into the impact of nutrition on the environment, mainly looking at nitrogen, so how it leaches, how it volatilizes into the atmosphere, etc., etc. And the conclusion they came to basically was that the planet wouldn't be able to cope if we carried on what we were doing. And that greenhouse gas emission could be up to 40% of the total N applied, whether that be agriculture, horticulture, sport and amenity, etc., etc. But at the same time, or even earlier, when Darren was thinking, is there a different way? He was also wanting to know if there was a different way that was as good or better. And these were the sort of things he was looking at. And at that time, he was quoted as saying that nitrogen applications are only 30 to 60% efficient. So that played into this study. We've also coping with lots of legislation in the world that's going to impact on our inputs too, which brings me to this. So on your site where you manage your turf, it's not for me to tell you what your priorities are, but I just threw a list together there that I believe would be part of your mindset when it comes to maintaining your turf. So we sit here all day long and argue the order, but in essence, I think most people would agree that most, if not all of those, would be part of your program or your thought process. What I question, and what Darren was questioning back then really, was, is everybody really looking at their nutritional inputs and their efficiency? Are they aware that, yes, that action of applying it gets the reaction of the plant, but what's the other reaction to the environment, etc.? And also, do many people really think about the presence of carbon, soluble carbon, and its importance? And some people might even just look at the carbon nitrogen ratio on a soil analysis. So there's a great quote here from Bob Oppold from an organisation called ISTRIC. So ISTRIC is an organisation in America that handles loads and loads and loads of soil analysis, soil samples, does analysis. A lot of that analysis is on organic matter. And his quote is that microbes are capable of digesting more organic matter than we can remove. So no matter what we do mechanically, if we have microbes working for us, they'll do a better job than we can. And overall, he had a belief that Mother Nature flourishes with the presence of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, when we in our industry look at macronutrients and micronutrients, commonly I see that people forget about hydrogen, oxygen and carbon. And all of those should be present in the soil, as you can see on that slide. Now, what we do in sports turf management, we compromise the amount of carbon, the amount of carbohydrates that are produced by the plant that end up in the soil system, because we chop down the solar panel of the grass leaf on a regular basis and stop it from being so efficient at photosynthesizing. So bear that in mind when it comes to the unique technologies that Redox brings to the market. So looking at this slide, we see that there are charges associated with certain nutrients. Interestingly, you look at ammonium, and it's positively charged, and nitrates negatively charged. You have, monovalent cations in potassium, etc. You have divalent cations that carry 2 positive charges in calcium. So when we talk about the interaction between nutrients, we have to remember that opposites attract, and elements with the same electrical charge will push each other apart. And this is critical when it comes to putting mixtures together in a drum, mixtures together in a spray tank, and mixtures into that big tank of the root zone that you're applying the product to. Similarly, this type of diagram is quite well known in our industry. So some nutrients actually stimulate the availability of others, whereas others can antagonize them. So when it comes to understanding the best way to apply nutrients, both of these really need to be taken into consideration. So the modern cutting-edge efficiency that Redox pioneered was the use of soluble carbon compounds in 3 manufacturing processes. So what Redox does, it uses organic carbon reactive processes that result in nutrients being plant available. Commonly, a lot of nutrition that is put down where it's not totally plant available, or it requires breakdown from microbial activity to become available. Now, traditionally, EDTA, for example, a synthetic chelate, would have been used to stop this from happening. What I'll do, I'll allow Hamish to come back on that subject a bit later. These are the 11 soluble carbons that Redox use in the processes. Some might be familiar, others might not, but you'll all be familiar with fulvic, humic, and amino acids, etc. But the range of these 11 makes Redox unique. So thinking about how minerals react in a mix, if you just blend 2 things together in a mixture, those reactions can cause those minerals to become bound up. So you'll see there that calcium and phosphate have become bound in that lower right hand image to actually form insoluble calcium phosphate. That then needs to be broken down to actually become plant available. Now, the plant can mine that phosphorus away from that calcium, but it needs a lot of energy to do so with the production of amino acids, etc. What Redox does in the chelation process, it uses amino acids to protect and deliver the nutrient to the system. So after that has happened, the amino acid is then beneficial to the system, as is the nutrient plant available. Similarly, in the complexing process, Redox uniquely uses fulvic and humic acids to perform a similar role to stop these soil reactions from happening. One phrase you might not have heard of, because I'm sure most people have heard of chelation and complexing, is what Redox referred to as microencapsulation. And there are elements that in the past have proven incredibly difficult to react, to protect them, to make them plant available, to reduce them having those negative effects in soil chemical reactions. And you'll see they're actually featured in this slide, silicon and calcium. So we have, with Redox, developed a unique way of bringing these particular compounds in a soil stable, tank stable, drum stable form. At that point, I'm going to hand to Hamish, and we will just go through these 10 products and tic-tac with some information on that. Hamish?
Thanks, Michael. So the Redox product range, they're in front of you, and we and Agrovista team are on hand to visit and speak to anyone in more detail. For those interested, I believe you're going to get a pack sent to you afterwards as well. But essentially, there are 10 products in the range, 2 wettable powders, that's the K+, which is 4.5 kg, the OxyCal, which is 9 kg, and then 8 liquids, which come in 10 litres. And they all share the unique formulation technique described by Mick, and regardless of the analysis of the individual products, the things that link them all together, the use of the soluble carbon compounds, and the fact that every bit of every jug is plant available. So maximum efficiency, and you'll hear that a lot as we talk about redox efficiency. But what is meant by soluble carbon within the redox range? Well, that basically means the compounds that redox have developed are small enough to be absorbed or eaten by the microbes in the soil. And just to expand on what Michael said, why is soluble carbon important? Well, in a normal, fully grown, functioning grass plant, it will be able to photosynthesize all the carbon, all the carbohydrates, the energy it needs for itself, and also to produce exudates to feed the microbes in the rhizosphere. However, on the greens, 90% plus of the grass plant is being removed and is technically on life support, struggling to generate enough energy for itself, let alone to produce exudates and carbon for the microbes. So soil bioactivity is reduced, and the microbes are not firing in all cylinders. And it is this low plant microbe symbiosis that will result in poor soil health and biodiversity. Hence, redox. Every product in the redox range has soluble carbon. So let's get on to the first one here, and that is C85. Now, C85 is designed specifically to increase microbial activity. Thanks, Mike. And it is classed as a multi-extraction humic and fulvic acid that contains short, medium, and long-chain soluble carbon compounds. What do we mean by that? Well, short will be used quickly, and medium and long will be used over longer periods of time. And short, medium, and long-chain carbon compounds are critical to soil structure, function, and soil health. It is soluble across a broad pH range, and it is the solubility of the carbon across this broad pH range that will increase the soil microbial diversity and contribute to improvements in the health of your soil. If you're using synthetic nitrogen alongside C85, it has been shown that nitrogen efficiency can increase by 25%. This not only ensures that your plant is getting the nutrition input it requires, but also ensures that you get maximum value for money. It is a key product to use in species transition programs as it immediately influences the soil system. And it's the closest effect to the original Farm Euro products for those out there that are familiar with it. Let's go to the next one. Right, Supreme. So Supreme works very well, actually. Sorry, Mike.
Sorry.
So Supreme will work very well with C85, and that is designed to increase nitrogen metabolism. It's referred to as the nitrogen metabolism manager in the range. By increasing amino acids and protein production, Supreme will utilize chlorophyll more efficiently, and photosynthesis, easy word to say, is enhanced. It converts excess nitrogen to amino acids and protein. And amino acids, as you may know, are important in carbohydrate production, nutrient metabolism, root growth, and as a food source to improve soil biodiversity. It assists greatly in species transition, any program generally from POA to fine lead grasses. And it helps maximize the value from nutritional inputs and reduces the need for N inputs and PGR use as the leaf growth is reduced. This also contains plant available manganese, which can be particularly useful for controlling take-all patch. And the next one we have, well, I'm just going to go into sort of a thatch management plus reduction in nutrient inputs. These two work very well together. And I'll just pass on to Mike to talk about the next case study we have here, which is Northampton County Golf Club.
Yeah, so Hamish described both those products incredibly well. When the Redox project sort of started for me back in January, and for the team in general, we received a lot of information, a lot of case studies, a lot of research data, etc., from America, where this product range has predominantly been sold. And some of those areas of America could translate quite well to the United Kingdom and and Europe, obviously some of them wouldn't. So trying to extrapolate really, really good information from the products and the presentations that we had, I started to think about how you could combine maybe 1 or 2 products together, not multiple product tank mixes, 7 or 8 products, etc., but giving every single product its own place in turf management by right, but then looking how some might be combined. So a situation where you look to reduce N inputs and manage thatch, I would say that's more applicable to our market over a period of time, especially when looking to go towards fescues, but with bents as well. So to put C85, which can make, as Hamish said, a real great effect on the reduction of nitrogen, because it instantly impacts that soil system, instantly impacts soil microbial activity, it impacts mineralization, nitrification. Then you go and think about what Supreme does, as Hamish alluded to, it helps in nitrogen metabolism. And the efficient metabolism of nitrogen converts nitrate to amino acids and protein. And as we've already said, we are compromising nitrogen metabolism because we don't allow the plant to photosynthesize in the way it normally do and exude those carbons back into the system. So if you put those 2 products together for a site that is looking to manage thatch, reduce nutrition inputs, and transition from power annual domination to fine leaf grasses such as bent and fescue, it's almost a no-brainer. So I had the fortune of going to see Rob Hay at Northamptonshire County with Hamish back in October. I think it was October the 9th. And his quote here was applicable then still, because he still hadn't applied any N since the 27th of July, apart from some ferrosol at 20 litres a hectare that delivered 3 kilograms of nitrogen. So he was seeing an impact from these 2 products in the way that we told him he would, in that he could reduce his nitrogen input and he could increase the longevity between applications. So if anybody is on that sort of program, and you have to bear in mind, we say the word transition for a reason, it's a staged process, and he's getting towards the end of that stage, and he wants to keep the power annual on the back foot. He wants to reduce his N inputs, wants to reduce the water inputs, and he wants to create a self-sufficient, mainly bent dominated sward. And these products have really helped him to do that.
Thanks, Mike. So the next one is CA. Now, CA is designed to improve calcium nutrition, strengthen cell walls, and build soil structure. Traditionally, calcium products have been difficult to tack mix, as Mike mentioned earlier. And why is this? Well, calcium is a cation, it's positively charged, it has 2 additional electrons, and wants to become stable, it will look for other molecules to become a neutral charge. Now, calcium forms insoluble compounds with other elements in soil, such as phosphorus, which is an anion, negatively charged. Opposites attract, likes repel. Just think of magnets and trying to put 2 negative charges on the ends together, they repel. So calcium in this form is an insoluble compound and not available to plants. So as mentioned before, if you've seen various products congeal in a tank mix before, that is probably down to the fact that they're unstable molecules and they're trying to pair up to become stable. And this is essentially what's happening in the soil. Calcium phosphorus precipitation, when free calcium accumulates in the soil solution, when the soil pH is high, it tends to form insoluble compounds with phosphorus. Consequently, phosphorus availability is also significantly decreased. Redox unique microencapsulation ensures that the calcium is plant available and doesn't form insoluble compounds such as calcium phosphate. The unique redox microencapsulation process sees the fusion of calcium mineral ion with a surfactant molecule, again soluble carbon, to eliminate negative soil reactions, isolating the calcium from the calcium carbonate and encapsulate it within surfactant molecule, enables it to be delivered wherever it's required. The next one we have, let me just do that, and then we just do this, is K+ microcrystal. So this is the first of 2 wettable powders. Now, K+ microcrystal is designed to improve antioxidant production to combat oxidative stress, where the accumulation of oxygen-free radicals, which are molecules that damage the cells. It increases plant respiration and helps against abiotic stresses. It is available it has available potassium and phosphate. Potassium supports water uptake into the plant, as I'm sure you'll be aware, which is essential when water resources are not readily available. Potassium also regulates the plant's leaf tissue openings and keeps moisture in the plant, improves osmotic pressure rather than moisture lost through the leaf. As we know, potassium is used to help autumn-winter turf hardening and can be used in conjunction with phosphite and will help with periods of high disease pressure. Quotes already out in the field regarding K+, that it's the best phosphate and potassium response for your buck. Again, that word efficiency. And K+ Micro utilizes both complex and chelated chemistry to make an effective product during colder temperatures. The next one we have is Fairway. Now, don't be confused or fooled by the word Fairway. It does so much more than just fairways. It can be used on all sports turf surfaces, grounds and pitches. It is designed to increase root development, microbial diversity and plant respiration. As a result, it's great for periods of abiotic stress. It is essentially a 3-in-1 product. It contains 25% P+, 50% K+, and 25% C85. This is probably best described as the all-rounder product of the range. It provides great and very quick visual response, and it makes turf look very healthy. And again, we've got good reports from the field about how quick the visual response has been. And Mike is now going to quickly talk about Folk Golf Centre.
Yeah, thanks, Hamish. So what I like about the Fairway Plus, really, as Hamish said, it's the all-rounder of the range. It contains 3 technologies from the Redox range all in one. So when we go out and about talking about the concept of Redox, I think this will be the product that people just might try. If they haven't got a particular problem, but the concept fits with their turf management, then I can see people trying this quite regularly. So Andy Harris, Folk Golf Centre in Dorset, he it's a 9-holer, it's a little family-run golf centre with a driving range. He was presented with these sort of facts that Hamish and I have been presented this morning. He fancied giving it a go. So he applied it at 12.5 litres a hectare on his 9 greens because he's really interested in turf health rather than turf growth. And what he implemented is a very austere programme regarding his inputs. And having understood the idea behind the product, he thought it would tick a box for him. And subsequently, from the trial, not only was he really happy, he's building it into his programme with 2021 to tank mix with the Attain and the Primer Select that he uses. So, yeah, a nice little story to talk about regarding Fairway Plus, really.
Yeah, great visual response for that one. The next one we've got is Micro Plus. It's exactly what it says on the jug. It's a comprehensive micronutrient fertilizer. The unique redox complexing and chelation technology again ensures the availability of these micronutrients is maximised and can be particularly effective in new build, sand, USGA constructions or any other inert root zones. And they are chelated with amino acids, and that's quite a key element because, as Mick mentioned earlier, with EDTA, it is a cheap synthetic chelation compound. This is foreign compound to the plant. The plant can't absorb ETA. It's an excessive build-up of that EDA compound is detrimental to the plant. The plant has to expend energy to remove an iron Fe molecule, for example, and this is an unnecessary process, and the more energy it has to use, the weaker it will become. And that released EDTA compound then goes out and stays around. It's unstable. It needs to become stable again, so it will gather up other nutrients, which again, tying these up. So the fact that our micronutrients are complex with amino acids either side is wonderful because it can be taken up the plant. It also has, Micro Plus has manganese, which again is an important feature that can help with take-all patch. And if I just show you the next slide here, it's a good illustration of how this works. I haven't got a cursor here, but you can see amino acids either side of that metal ion, and that will go into the plant, and the plant can use the amino acids as well as the metal ion. Whereas the EDTA, it has to work to remove that metal ion and then expel it. It's just an inefficient way to do it, really. So that's the Micro Plus. The next one we've got here is Nature Cure. I just move the slide along. So Nature Cure stimulates root development and metabolism. It's quite an exciting product actually, because as within the formulation is a unique blend of 2 botanical extracts. In recent years, plant parasitic nematodes and root knot nematodes in particular have been responsible for causing significant damage to all turf areas. The botanical extract essentially coat the roots, and the parasitic nematodes do not like the taste, hence they stop feeding. Chemicals have historically been used to control harmful nematodes are generally non-selective, but NatureCure will not harm any beneficial nematodes, fungi and bacteria, plus the predators. So NatureCure stimulates and optimizes root development, quality and quantity under stressful conditions, and increases antioxidant production that stimulate and recover damaged roots. Again, we're getting great reports from the field, particularly from staging environments, and we have a half-decent Premier League team that's getting pretty good results with it, which I'm sure you'll hear about in due course. Next up is Expect. So Expect, again, uses our complex technology, and it's best described as a phosphorus primer, as it uniquely metabolizes phosphorus within the root zone. Now, we know that phosphorus is essential for rooting. We also know that in the UK and Ireland, application of phosphorus is generally not recommended due to the risk of promoting poor ingress. Many people will tell you they've had a soil test carried out and it's showing high levels of P. Now, this is true, but it's mainly because P forms insoluble compounds, as we talked about earlier, with elements like calcium, and becomes locked up, and this makes it unavailable to the plant. And it can be confusing when you look at a soil test and it says I'm high in P, but my rooting's not very good. It's because it's all been tied up. So Expect metabolizes the P already present in the root zone, making it available to the plant. It's ideal for spring growth. It contains L-amino acids that improve lateral root branching, which is key because that's where the micropores are and that's where all the nutrients will be. Stolon development and overall soil health. So benefits are great for newly seeded and poor rooting situations. And I'll pass back over to Mike, who's going to talk to you about another testimonial.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault, mate.
Hamish, so as I alluded to, we were trying to build the story, differentiate the product range, and build up little tank mixes that would help people. So as well as doing those internally, customers would take on the information from the product as presented to them and see how it fitted their situation. So Stuart Adams at Cardigan Golf Club had some weaker areas on fairways and really liked the idea of using Fairway Plus for general health improvement, recovery from renovation, etc., without any inputs of N. But he also believed to get seed establishment, root development, etc., that available phosphate would help in that process. But he didn't want to apply phosphate. So Expect tick that box. So it's phosphate-free product that actually metabolizes phosphate that's already in there. And it's all down to the specific soluble carbons that are used in the processes. So he said that the response was immediate and evident, pick up in plant health, increase in density, and overall increase in rooting, etc., has been observed. And if budget allows, he said he's going to carry on using it into 2021.
Thanks, Mike. We've got a question from France, but Mike will get back to you there at the end. But thank you for your question. So the next one is OxyCal. Now, this is a second wettable powder. OxyCal is designed to accelerate photosynthetic activity. It boosts key plant enzymes and polyphenols, which enhance plant growth, even when the growing environment is not conducive for optimum plant growth. The active oxygen, along with properly complex calcium and specific carbon compounds, provide a great source to light-starved plant cells, allowing them to produce enough enzyme strength and hardiness to accelerate photosynthetic activity. It's a great product for areas which are shaded, for example, and also helps with abiotic stresses and recovery from disease or renovations. If anyone's familiar with the SRI Facebook, you'll see Mike there at the SRI discussing a recent trial that OxyCal has undertaken, and it really helps with areas that are in shade. And the final product that I'm going to talk about is SI. Now, SI is designed to strengthen cell walls, which can reduce the effects from ball marks and can be used to maintain or increase ball roll. SI provides sufficient calcium and silicon nutrition. And like calcium products, which we mentioned earlier, silicon products have traditionally always been very difficult to produce in tank mix, as the silicon gets locked up and then is unavailable to the plant. Most silicon products on the market are potassium silicate based, which are reliant on leaf absorption, rendering them susceptible to wash off and being mown off. SI uses silicon dioxide, which utilizes microencapsulation technology to ensure that it is fully tank mixable and plant available, very efficient. The SI is designed to enter the plant both via the roots and leaf, so it takes longer but ensures that the nutrient is available, is delivered exactly where it is required. It is not prone to wash off or being removed so easily by mowing. One thing to note that potassium silicate is very alkaline, whereas SI uses silicon dioxide, which is a pH neutral. The unique microencapsulation technology stops the silicon from being negatively affected by other elements in the soil, similar to the calcium, and it needs a few days to be taken up, as we've said, because it's root absorbed. It's a great product for providing speed for greens during tournaments without lowering the height of cut, and I believe Mike's got a testimonial to talk about that later on. So that concludes my little section. Back over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Hamish. So, as I said, we tried to bring some solutions to the market early on in bringing this product range out. Now, what we need to understand is that, going back to that quote from Bob Oppold, that soluble carbon is absolutely essential in the system. And the list of priorities that I had in an earlier slide that may or may not be reflective of what you feel. One of my colleagues in America, Scott Poynott, said, that list may or may not be right, but the presence of soluble carbon in the system makes every single one of them a whole lot easier. And this is what we're trying to bring to bear, really. So I'll go through 4 of these situations now. And it was no coincidence that when Hamish presented these 2 products, they were actually next to each other, because in periods of extreme fungal disease pressure that you may be experiencing at the moment, I know some parts of the country are, if you incorporate the K+ microcrystal, which is 31% phosphate, so you're going to trigger increased respiration. That's going to increase adenosine triphosphate in the plant, going to trigger plant beneficial antioxidants, and the big kick of plant available potassium is a bit of a no-brainer for this sort of period of time. If you use that in conjunction with the CA, 20% fully plant available calcium to toughen up that cell wall in the outer cuticle can really, really be beneficial when conditions are such. So Hamish really did talk well about the Oxycal. If you're looking at recovery of fungal disease, time to get recovery is critical. And what we find with Oxycal, it's great for recovery. It's a great recovery product. And so is NatureCure, but for totally different reasons. So Oxycal, activated oxygen, properly complex calcium, a unique blend of soluble carbons, has really helped close up sort of aeration holes, etc. NatureCure will get root development and root recovery. It will, you may be disturb roots if you aerate at a certain time, and maybe recovery might be compromised from that. But if you put these 2 products together after aeration or after fungal disease, and you really want to narrow down that recovery time, they produce a fantastic result. So the products in the difficult year we've had were slightly delayed coming over from the States. The project was on hold for a little bit, and we had different ideas if we'd launched it in March, April, May, June, whatever. But really, the availability of the product really happened in about July, August. So then we started thinking about which one of these tank mixes would fit that time of year. And a lot of people had foliar anthracnose at that time. And without any hesitation, we went out and advocated this mix. And for this particular case study, I could have put another 20 up. So this is Hamilton Golf Club, Scotland. Made the application on the 14th of August. You can see the effects of the anthracnose on the left-hand photo. The day after, but within 6 days of application, exactly the same spot was photographed, and it just says it all. So that was critical in the back end of the summer with foliar anthracnose. But thinking about it now, where people have been hit with microdocium patch, the last thing we want is turf to be affected by disease scars going through the winter and still be looking poor if we get a cold, dry spring, March time, early April. So if the opportunity is there to get optimum recovery between now and the onset of winter dormancy, I can see many, many people going for this mix. Again, Hamish did a great job talking about these 3 products. But in a greens pre-tournament mix, if you're looking to get optimum speed of ball roll for your biggest event of the year or a number of big events of the year, if you put K+ microcrystal, SI and Supreme down 2 to 3 days before the event, you get a significant increase in ball roll speed. Thinking about it, you're probably putting the turf under a bit of stress with extra mechanical operations leading into a tournament. So for all the reasons I've talked about, the K+ microcrystal, that ticks that box. The SI, get it down, the mix down 2 to 3 days before. As we said, you need that coming up in a true plant available form, not a silicate that coats the leaf and makes it stiff for a couple of days. This truly affects plant cells and cell walls. So you need to allow those 2 to 3 days. And that erectness, that turgidity it causes in the leaf, we all know that can increase ball roll. Now, Supreme, you don't really want to have a massive clipping yield when you're trying to create speed. So if you're using Supreme to metabolize nitrogen, convert the excess nitrate to amino acids and protein, it's like a natural growth regulator. So what actually happens if you try that? And we've got this great quote from Michael at Woldingham, who's now moved on. Now the 2 aren't linked. He was actually on yesterday, listening to the same presentation, and luckily he quite liked the way we presented it. But he is one of these people likes putting products to the test. He went ahead with our pre-tournament mix, worked very closely with my colleague Alan Pierce, and he actually had to take a photograph when he got off the mower and felt that the grass was standing up like it was being affected by static, and he got very, very measurable increases in ball roll and some really good feedback from his golfers in the club championship. So this is a little story from a guy called Dean Pillar at Cordova Bay Golf Club in British Columbia. Now, yes, it is in Canada, but it's not that dissimilar to the type of climate we have in many, many areas of Europe. And he is a massive advocate of the Redox Turf RX line. He was one of these people who 10 years ago asked the same question as the founder of Redox: is there a different way? And he was treading water, he was doing all the same things year on year just to keep that equilibrium on his golf course, and he wanted to take to another level. Well, one of the things he does, he incorporates this pre-tournament mix on his bent power greens. And what you see there is leading up to the point of application, he had structured mechanical operations, frequency of cut, height of cut, rolling. But post-application, he didn't change anything in those mechanical operations. You see that within 24 hours, he had an increase in green speed, but 48 hours after application, a significant increase in speed without putting that turf under any more stress. And I do believe, as well as Michael at Woldingham, there's been plenty of other people who have tried this, and there will be plenty of people in the future, because the pressure on green speed, it doesn't get any smaller. And we all know we want to try and achieve that without stressing the plant out. Similarly, you could use that mix, just drop out the K+. So this is Ralston Golf Club up in Scotland, and he was measuring his clipping yield, and post application of these 2 products, for the reasons I already said, his clipping yield went down dramatically. So he could increase speed without reducing the height of cut. Also, at this time of year, many people are putting their height of cut up. So if you can actually maintain green speed while raising the height of cut and taking the stress off the plant, it's another tool for the greenkeeper's toolbox. So then we come to this stadium pitch scenario. I think we have some groundsmen on today, but even the greenkeepers have a passing interest, I find, in stadium management, probably football generally. And you imagine a stadium pitch, which is predominantly sand, will be devoid in micronutrients. So having the Micro Plus in a tank mix is a bit of a no-brainer. So it is fully plant available, complex insulated, micronutrient package in an environment which wouldn't necessarily be abundant in those elements. A pitch that might have had a history of plant parasitic nematodes. If you introduce Nature Cure to the system, not only do you have healthier roots, etc., but as Hamish said, you end up with this less palatable root system to the plant parasitic nematode. In a football pitch situation, they are going to be abundant purely because they have the food source. They have the juicy roots of the ryegrass there. Because the soil food web is so out of balance in that sort of inert root zone, especially in the early period, they are going to take the baton and they're going to run with it until something happens. And as Hamish said, generally nematicides are non-selective. They'd kill every nematode in there. But most nematodes are actually beneficial. You've got your fungal feeders, your bacterial feeders, you've got your parasitic, your saprophytes, I should say. And if we can get them into balance, the whole system benefits. So if the plant parasitic nematode has its food source resource reduced, it will look for another food source. It might be eaten by other nematodes, etc., and everything gets back into kilter. And then Supreme. If you use Supreme, as I've already said, as the nitrogen metabolizer, the natural growth regulator, when you're looking for consistent ball roll, reducing clipping yield, it's a fantastic mix for a stadium with those three things to tick off, really. And there is a stadium in the Premier League that is using this predominantly because of the history of nematode issues, plant parasitic nematode issues, and he's getting some great results. So, in summary, I say solutions there. You can also use these as a prevention. So if you know what historically is a problem on a site, you can think about which products you might use in this range. So for abiotic stress, improving soil health, rooting issues, general quality and performance of the surface for sport. First and foremost, you've got to grow a healthy plant. That goes right back to what Darren said all those years ago. You need to optimize efficient delivery of plant nutrition whilst also maximizing nutrients that are already present in your soil. And with Redox, we're really using modern cutting edge technology, but also having awareness of protecting the environment, which is pretty key in all of our thoughts at the moment. So as a summary, that the range is fully tank mixable, and it's also tank mixable with every other product that we bring to the market in the UK and Europe. There are tank mix guidelines on the Redox line, so there's an order of mixing. Every single image in this presentation that's shown from left to right, an image of a product, then another, that is the order you put them in the tank. So if you need to cross-reference, and you can see this and you can't see another information source, that's why they're put like that. But there's a mixing order. There's some mixing recommendations for Oxycal, but you follow those and you just don't have a problem at all. 50 mesh filters, pretty standard in a sprayer, 600 litres of water for every single application rate that we've talked about today. What really sets Redox apart from the competition, as Hamish has already said, is that every mineral and every formulation has been reacted with a soluble carbon, and every ounce of every jug has a purpose. Is plant available or is soil available? It's not there for any other reason. It's all about efficiency. So, questions. I don't know if anybody wants to type a question away. That Olivier from France. The only answer I can give you today, Olivier, obviously the 31% phosphorus in K plus microcrystals expressed as P2O5. If you need to know some more, I'll come back to you on that. And the potassium is obviously expressed as K2O on the label. As far as the origin, if you need some more information, I'll get back to you on that. Oh, here's a great one. So, will Nature Cure have a beneficial effect on any other soil-borne organisms other than the nematodes? So, been asked that already. So, if you think about root feeding grubs, I can understand why people in our industry might be getting a bit excited about Nature Cure. So, I have followed this up in the States, and I haven't really got much in the way of research or data, only anecdotal evidence. When we're dealing, or we, Agrovista, have been dealing with that particular football picture we were talking about earlier, it's very easy to get a sample sent away to a lab and look at the soil food web and get an analysis on that. It's not so easy to get an analysis on the number of chafer grubs or leather jackets in your soil, I would say. So it probably would be quite anecdotal at the moment. But park that thought for the minute. We're not going to make any claims that we can't back up, but maybe there's a particular rate with nature that might be more beneficial than another. But at the moment, I can't really answer that other than saying the answer I've said so far. Oh, here we go. Christopher. There's a lot of exciting products to take in. Well, Christopher, you're in exactly the same position I was about 11 months ago, because they are exciting products and there is a lot to take in. Have a template idea of a plan for gold greens use over a year. Now, I would say the key thing there is to contact your local person from our company, Agrovista, and analyse maybe 2 or 3 key things you want to address during the year. So you might have that base of C85 and C85 and Supreme if you're on that transition program from POA to more finer grass species. But you might have 2 key points in the year where you might find that you've historically had dollar spot, or you have had the microdoculum patch. So it's a case of layering. I wouldn't say it's a standard program. I could sit here and give you one straight away, and I know it wouldn't do you any harm. If you use Fairway Plus all year long, it wouldn't do you any harm. So, as I say, if you wanted to try something as a good all-rounder, then I would go for Fairway Plus. If you want to look at the 3 or 4 key aspects you want to improve in research, the key thing is to get that on-site visit, if we're allowed, and layer the things into the program that would help you to the best. Could Supreme be used in place of a chemical plant growth regulator? So, that's a great question. What we say is using Supreme in a program will result in a reduction in the amount of PGR you use. Now, when you look at plant growth regulator is stopping the plant from doing what it would naturally do. What we do with Supreme, we assist it in doing what it would naturally do. So you get a similar result in a totally different way. So we regulate growth with Supreme by converting that nitrate to amino acids and protein. Going back to that Northamptonshire County Golf Club, sitting there with Rob, everybody managing turf wants to know an answer. How much N will I reduce? How long a time can I put between my N applications? Well, on every site, that turf manager is the expert. We're just somebody who comes in and tries to give our best advice. So when it comes to measuring the reduction in chemical PGR, I would say that will come as a site-by-site experience process. I know for a fact that people have reduced PGR use. Whether every other aspect of their maintenance means they can take PGR out of their program, it's not for me to say, because one of the key things you might have noticed, there's no nitrogen in the Redox Turf RX line per se. The only nitrogen that occurs in there comes in the natural fermentation processes. So the nitrogen input is totally down to the turf manager. Now, we might give our input and we might be able to get somebody on that path with the Redox products, but it's down to them to understand the rate, the nutrient or nitrogen source, the regularity, etc. of the nitrogen they apply. But what you will find in combination is you reduce your N inputs and you reduce your PGRs if you use C85 and Supreme. I'm not going to sit here and say that it will replace chemical PGRs. Would any of the products work on breaking up black layer? I would say it depends what the cause of the black layer is. So sometimes black layer can be caused by a pan and like a second perch water table, anaerobic conditions of water's not moving through. I would say that every single product in the range would help that situation. One that would particularly be better than another, it would probably be Oxycal, I would say. But again, Kevin, a great question. I would say the best thing is to give us some more information or contact somebody from our company who's more local to you or Agrovista, and let's go and see what's going on. So my first thoughts there are water movement. and what might be causing that, because any anaerobic situation is caused by water being present at the exception of air and oxygen. So it depends what's causing that. But I could see that it would be a tool in the toolbox for anybody who is trying to manage black layer. Is this range of products compatible for tank mixing with all surfactant chemistries? That's a great question, that is. So we know the tank mixer with our products. So I would say if you're using non-ionic compounds, you're using straight and reverse block copolymer, modified block copolymer, absolutely fine. If you are using any anionic chemistry, I would never ever put the two together. So for the reasons we've already expressed, how the electrical charge of a compound can change the behaviour of another, we don't really want to be wanting to put anionic surfactant in a mix of our products, or I wouldn't particularly use them in anywhere that's got a high clay content anyway. So if you are using an anionic penetrant, for example, then keep them apart and be aware that that might actually affect the efficacy of nutrients in your system. When you say PGR reduction, do you mean with the intervals? That's another great question. So David's asked, PGR reduction, is that in increasing the intervals or the rate of application? I would say a bit of both. So back in 2005, I was involved in the launch of Primo Max on the market, and that eventually came on in 2006. And we came out with very, very sort of black and white recommendations, and within 2 years, everybody had adapted them to suit their own site. So again, I don't sell PGRs. What I do know is that our products are tank mixable with the likes of Trinexpac Ethyl and the Traxor that comes from BASF and sold by Agrovista. There's no problem tank mixing them. But again, we're not responsible for every single part of the turf maintenance program in place. What I would say is, sitting here, I think you would be able to increase your intervals and reduce your rate of a PGR use if you're going with something like the C85 Supreme Mix. So we are at 11:58.
Michael, just have a quick comment about maybe a lot of greenkeepers out there. We're having meetings with general managers and talking about budgets at this time. And so the Oxy-Cow combination of aeration is really quite a good conversation to have, because it will reduce the amount of time it's taken up for disruption on the greens, which is, I know the GMs get a lot of comments from members about that. And so if that's a good conversation to have with the GM, saying, look, if you want to reduce the stress you get and the time that the greens are not looking great, then this combination using before and after will actually reduce the time. So just, I know a lot of guys are having meetings with GMs at the moment.
So, no, from my point of view, I just want to say thank you for everybody for joining, and I'll hand back to you, Hamish, to maybe say a few words before we hand over to Dan to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much for everyone giving their time. It's much appreciated. And I said at the top, if there's anyone who wants a more in-depth conversation about it, Agrovista guys and we are available to come and have a look and be on site and answer further questions. But thank you very much for your time. Over to Dan. Yeah,
again, sincere thanks for attending, everyone. Just to emphasise, we have 32 people that are focused on fine turf throughout the UK. So if anyone needs any on-site agronomy, we'll come in with the Aquatrols regional area manager and come and support you if it's about redox. But we are there to support you. We can also do site remote contactless agronomy reports. We don't have to come into your area. So in these times, we can produce a report, we can social distance, we can send that through to you for your Greens Committee or your GM, as Hamish says. So wishing everyone stay safe during this time, and hopefully 2021 will be a much more enjoyable year to do business with you all. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.